Are Airbnbs a good investment for retirement? It really depends. So if you were lucky enough to acquire real estate over the past decade when interest rates were low before the Fed started raising rates, or you were able to benefit from the accumulation that has been larger than average over the last decade in real estate prices, it may make a lot of sense, right? When interest rates are low, you can arbitrage the positive cash flow in that investment a lot easier. Plus, it's an additional source of income in retirement. Remember, the key word in retirement is cash flow. How much do you have coming in versus how much you have going out? But if you were one of the unlucky ones who didn't acquire any real estate over the last decade before the real estate market boomed or before interest rates became extremely high, then you may need to get your calculator out to run some numbers before making that investment for retirement. So let's just look at an example. So today, mortgage interest rates, or the cost of capital, is right around 6.2%. So this is what it's going to cost you to leverage your money, your down payment, to acquire a property that is higher in value than you have cash available. So right now, 6.25% is lower than where we were maybe 6 months ago in the sevens, but it's still a really high cost of capital that makes the calculation even more difficult for retirees or anyone actually looking to invest in real estate as an investment. The reason for this is because it's going to cost you a lot more money to leverage your own funds in order to make the investment worthwhile. So this cost that we're talking about, that's mortgage, principal, and interest payments. Don't forget property taxes and insurance. These all reduce what you bring in each month for rental revenue. So as we look at a calculation, I was recently talking to a client who was interested in looking at a Airbnb to add into their portfolio. So let's take a look at this now. So as you can see, this is a property. She was looking to purchase this in Lake Havasu City. It's roughly $470,000. Now she was going to put roughly $160,000 down, leaving her roughly $300,000 to $310,000 in a mortgage payment. Now, if we look at the first chart, this shows us that the monthly mortgage is roughly $1,877, and the income, we determine this income from AirDNA. So AirDNA is a website that you can go to that will look at Airbnbs in the area. It'll give you an estimated daily average rate for your Airbnb and also give you an estimate at how many days per month you can expect to Airbnb your rental property out. In this case, it was about $153 a day with an average monthly booking of about 13 to 15 days a month. So that then generates roughly about $1,900 to almost $2,000 of monthly income. Now, there is a property manager involved to manage the Airbnb. They're taking 20% right off the top. So that reduces that monthly income by about $377 every single month. You reduce property taxes, insurance. We threw in about $160 a month for maintenance and other random costs, which could be included, like cleaning as an example. That gives them a negative cash flow of about $841 per month, or an annualized negative cash flow of somewhere right around $10,000. Now, this may not be a problem if you've got the extra discretionary funds to supplement this shortfall, but what you're betting on is appreciation in the real estate. So let's talk about that for a second. Historically, real estate appreciates by somewhere around 4 to 5% a year. Now, this property, if you look back at the first screen, in 2018 to today, its average appreciation is roughly 8.5%. Remember what I said in the first part of the video? If you weren't lucky enough to buy when real estate prices were lower or when interest rates were lower before the acceleration in prices, well, this property saw that acceleration in prices. It's averaged roughly about 8.5% since 2018. So on average, though, real estate tends to only appreciate by about 4 to 5%. So that's something to be very mindful of if you're buying properties at these elevated prices on top of what that cost of capital may be. If we look at the second chart, then what we'll see here is a breakdown over 20 years of accumulation. Remember what I said, there's negative cash flow in this investment, so you're really only betting on the appreciation of the asset to deliver the rates of return. Now, what we don't include in here are anything like refinancing at a future rate over the next 20 years, that can make these numbers a lot more attractive and potentially bring that cost of capital down, which would then produce more positive cash flow. But if you look at this, we're looking at roughly $18,000 a year of annual income, $22,000 a year of mortgages, roughly $5,000 a year of additional expenses, so that negative cash flow of about $10,000 per year. What you'll notice in the column that says cash on cash return, over that 20 years, if there's no refinancing to bring that cost of capital down, it is never positive. And the reason it's never positive is because the cost versus what the rental income could be just never arbitrages to the positive side of the ledger. Every year, we're assuming that the real estate property appreciates by about 4.5%. That's historical growth, like I mentioned earlier. And only at the end of this 20 years, if you were to sell it, would you then inevitably get a return on the investment. But however, if you look at the average return or the average IRR for this investment over its time frame, it's only in the range of about 4.5 to 6.7%. So then you have to beg the question is that type of IRR enough to have an illiquid asset, which is real estate, have your money tied up, especially when you can get a 1-year CD or a 5-year CD somewhere in the range of 3 to 4% right now. So is it worth it to take that risk? Now, the one thing about Airbnbs is that they are very economically sensitive, right? It's discretionary spending. So if there's any kind of economic slowdown, you could see those daily rates not only come down, but maybe the number of days in the month that you're booking also come down, causing that negative cash flow to increase even more, or maybe forcing you to dip into your accounts in retirement to be able to arbitrage that event. So it depends if Airbnb is a good investment for retirement, and it depends on what you're trying to achieve within these properties to add into the portfolio. Remember, real estate tends to be a non-correlated asset, so that could be a benefactor for your overall allocation depending on how much you have in stocks, how much you have in bonds, or how much you already currently have in real estate. But my answer is it really depends. In this case, when we looked at this for the clients, it didn't make a lot of sense for them to have to dip into their retirement cash flow by about $10,000 per year. That's $10,000 less that they're going to get to travel every year over the next few years. So if you have any comments, leave them below. Make sure you hit subscribe or like. We like both of those, and I'll talk to you soon.